The first time the longevity researcher Dan Buettner saw Panchita Castillo, she was not sitting in a rocking chair. She was standing in her front yard in a frilly pink dress, swinging a 4FT machete at the jungle that kept creeping toward her house. She was 99 years old. The branches did not stand a chance, and the strangest part of the whole scene was not the machete, and it was not the dress. It was breakfast, because the meal this woman had eaten that morning, in the morning before that, in almost every morning for nearly a century, was the same three things. The same plate, the same order, the same small kitchen on the Nicoya Peninsula of Costa Rica. There is one detail in that plate I'm going to come back to, because it is the reason her bones were still strong enough to hold a machete at 99. Get a pen. This is the story of what Panchita ate, why it worked, and how you put it on your own table by Sunday. Panchita Castillo lived on the dry, forgotten edge of Costa Rica in the Nicoya Peninsula, one of the 5 places on Earth where people reach 100 at rates the rest of the world cannot explain. Her full name was Maria Francisca Castillo. The neighbors called her Panchita. She raised her children in a house with a dirt floor kitchen and a wood fire, and she outlived most of them. She passed her 109th year still walking to see her family, still feeding anyone who came through the door, still rising before the sun. Her son, Don Pedro, was the one who described her mornings to the researchers, because Panchita herself did not think there was anything to describe. To her, it was just breakfast. To the scientists who came to study Nicoya, it was a map. Here is what was on the plate every single day at 5 in the morning. First, a corn tortilla, made by hand from corn that had been soaked overnight in water and a pinch of white lime. Second, black beans, slow cooked, folded into rice the night before, so the two sat together and traded flavor in a dish the whole country calls gallo pinto. Third, a slice of fresh white cheese, soft and a little sour, made from the milk of the cow out back. Around those 3, there was usually an egg, a cup of strong coffee, and a little sour milk. But the 3 that never moved, the 3 that were there in the wet season and the dry season, in good years and hungry years, were the tortilla, the beans, and the cheese. Corn, bean, cheese. Write those 3 words down. We are coming back to each one, and the order matters more than you would think. Let me start with the tortilla, because the tortilla is where most people get the science wrong. We are told corn is just starch, empty carbohydrate, a blood sugar bomb. And if you eat the kind of corn that comes out of a factory, ground into flour and puffed into a chip, that is closer to true. But Panchita did not eat that corn. Her corn went through a process her great-grandmothers used, a process with a name almost nobody in the modern grocery store has heard. The dried corn was soaked overnight in water mixed with cal, which is slaked lime, a soft white mineral. That overnight soak does something almost magical to the kernel. Hold that thought, because the magic is not the part you would guess. When corn sits in lime water, 2 things change inside it. The hard outer skin loosens and slips off, which makes the corn easier to grind and easier to digest. But the bigger change is invisible. The lime unlocks a B vitamin called niacin that is trapped inside raw corn in a form the human body cannot absorb. Cultures that ate untreated corn for generations developed a brutal deficiency disease. Cultures that soak their corn in lime, the way Panchita did, never did. And there is a bonus. The lime itself is calcium. Every tortilla she pressed by hand carried a quiet dose of calcium straight into the bread. So the tortilla on her plate was not empty starch, it was a calcium tablet you could fold around your beans. That is the detail I promised you at the start. The machete at 99 was held up in part by the lime in the corn. Now move with me from the tortilla to the beans, because the beans are where the real engine is. A pot of black beans sat on the back of Panchita's stove most of the time, the same way a kettle sits on yours. Beans were not a side dish in Nicoya. They were the meal, and meat was the side when there was meat at all. Here is the thing about a black bean that the diet industry has spent 30 years trying to make you forget. A black bean is a slow-burning, high-fiber package of plant protein that feeds the good bacteria living in your gut. Those bacteria take the fiber and make a short fatty acid called butyrate And butyrate is one of the calmest, most protective signals your colon can receive. People who eat a cup of beans a day have measurably lower rates of the diseases that take most of us out before 90. And the beans were almost never eaten alone. They were folded into rice. That pairing, the galopinto, is not a cultural accident. A bean is low in one building block of protein, and rice is low in a different one. Put them on the same fork and you get a complete protein, the kind we are told you can only get from a steak. Panchita got hers from a 5-cent handful of beans in a scoop of leftover rice. Think about your own last few breakfasts for a second. What carried the protein? For most of us, it was eggs, or it was nothing, or it was a powder. For Panchita, it was a pot of beans that had been quietly simmering since yesterday. Same village, same stove. The third thing was waiting on the plate next to them. The cheese is the part that confuses people. So let me change the camera angle. We are told that to live long, you must give up dairy. Panchita ate fresh cheese every single morning of her life and reached 109. The cheese was not the shrink-wrapped orange block from a refrigerated aisle. It was queso fresco, made that week from a cow she could see from the window, salted lightly and eaten soft and a little tangy. It gave her a hit of protein and calcium and fat right alongside the corn and the beans, and it tasted like something. This matters more than the chemistry. Panchita did not endure her breakfast. She enjoyed it. She looked forward to it. A diet you grit your teeth through gets abandoned by February. A diet built around a plate you actually want to eat gets carried for 100 years. That is the real reason the three foods worked. They were good. I want to come back to one thing the researchers found in Nicoya, because it sits underneath all three foods and almost nobody talks about it. The water. The wells of the Nicoya Peninsula draw from limestone, and the water that came up Panchita's well was hard, rich in calcium and magnesium. She drank it. She cooked her beans in it. She soaked her corn in it. Every part of that breakfast was built on mineral-heavy water that quietly strengthened bone year after year after year. The researchers who measured it found Nicoyans had remarkably strong bones and low rates of the fractures that end so many lives after a fall. You cannot pipe Nicoya's well into your kitchen, but you can understand the lesson. Strong old age is built from small, boring, mineral-rich inputs repeated 10,000 times. Not a supplement. Let me step out of the kitchen for a moment, because I have spent a lot of time watching people try to copy Blue Zone meals, one dish at a time, and give up. They cook the beans once, they buy the corn once. Then the old breakfast creeps back in the way the jungle crept toward Panchita's house. The reason it creeps back is that nobody handed them the whole week. They got a single recipe and no system. That is the gap we built the Blue Zone Body Reset to close. It takes the three-food logic you are hearing right now from Nicoya, and the bean pot from Sardinia, and the morning greens from Icaria, and lays them across 90 days with a shopping list for each week, and 30 recipes pulled straight from Centenarian kitchens like this one. The bundle, the protocol, plus the cookbook, is one printable package, and the link is in the description below. If you have ever cooked one Blue Zone meal, and then watched your old habits walk right back in, that is exactly what the 90-day plan is built to stop. Then come right back here, because Panchita's morning is not finished, and the next part is the part you can copy tomorrow with no special corn at all. There is one more piece of the morning worth naming, and it is the timing. Panchita ate at 5 hours before the heat, and then she moved. The plate was fuel for a day of doing, not the last thing before sitting down. That order, eat then move, is built into nearly every Blue Zone. The food goes in, and the body immediately puts it to work, walking, lifting, tending instead of storing it. Most of us have the order backwards. We eat the heaviest meal at night and then lie down. Panchita's heaviest plate was her first one, and the sun pulled her straight out into the yard behind it. You do not have to swing a machete, but a short walk after that morning plate, even 10 minutes around the block, lines your body up with hers more than any supplement ever could. Try it once. Eat the beans, then walk before you sit. So how do you actually eat like Panchita without a wood fire and a cow out back? Start with the beans, because the beans do the heaviest lifting, and they are the easiest to copy. Cook a pot once a week. Dried beans, water, an onion, a little salt, a long, slow simmer. Keep them on hand the way she did. That single pot turns into breakfast, lunch, and dinner with almost no extra work. Fold a scoop into rice in the morning, and you have Panchita's Gallo Pinto. That is step one, and it costs less than $1 a day. Notice how low that number is. We are coming back to it. For the corn, you do not need to soak your own. Look for tortillas made from nixtamalized corn, which is the lime-soaked corn we talked about, sometimes labeled masa harina or nixtamal on the package. A real corn tortilla, warmed in a dry pan, carries that same quiet calcium and that same unlocked niacin. Eat it the way she did, as the plate and the spoon both. Fold it around the beans. Skip the flour tortilla, which is a different food entirely, closer to white bread than to anything that came off Panchita's fire. For the cheese, you do not need a cow. A slice of fresh, simple cheese alongside the beans and the tortilla finishes the plate the way she finished hers. The point is not to chase the exact Costa Rican queso fresco. The point is the pattern. Complete protein from beans and rice, calcium and niacin from lime-treated corn, a little real dairy fat, and protein and flavor from fresh cheese. 3 foods, 1 plate, every morning. Try it once this week and pay attention to how you feel at 11 in the morning when the coffee and toast crowd is crashing and reaching for a snack. Panchita did not crash at 11. Okay, she was halfway through the day's work. There is one more thing on that table I've been holding back, and it is the squash, the third sister. In Nicoya, it was usually a hard, sweet field pumpkin called ayote, cooked down soft or thrown into the bean pot to thicken it. The squash brought color, and color in food almost always means the deep pigments that protect the eyes and the skin as the years pile up. It also brought potassium and water and a gentle sweetness that meant Panchita never needed the sugar the rest of us pour into everything. And around the squash, there was fruit, the kind that grew on the trees in her own yard, papaya, plantains, a little wild banana. She did not buy fruit flown in from another hemisphere and coated in wax. She walked into the yard and picked what was ripe that week. Her sweetness came from a tree, not a bag, and her body knew the difference. Check your own kitchen for a second. Where does your sweet come from? For most of us, it arrives in a wrapper. For Panchita, it fell off a branch. Now step back from the plate entirely, because the food was only half of why she lasted. The researchers who studied Nicoya kept running into the same thing, and it had nothing to do with calories. The old people there had a reason to get up. In Costa Rica, they call it a plan de vida, a plan for living, a sense that someone still needs you, and the day still has a shape. Panchita had children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren wandering through her kitchen, and she fed every one of them. She had a yard to keep, a fire to tend, neighbors to greet. She was not retired from her life. She was still in the middle of it at 100. The machete was not exercise, it was work that needed doing, and that distinction turns out to matter. People who keep a real reason to move, who are still useful to someone, outlive the ones who sit down and wait. Her muscles stayed because she used them. Her mind stayed because it had somewhere to go each morning, and she was almost never alone with her plate. Breakfast in Nicoya was not a thing you did standing over the sink. It was shared. Children, grandchildren, a neighbor who happened by. The same beans, the same tortillas, the same cheese passed around the same table every day for decades. That web of people is not a soft, sentimental detail. It is one of the most measured protectors of a long life there is. Loneliness wears the body down the way, rust wears down a gate. Company holds it together. Panchita ate her 3 foods inside a crowd that loved her, and that crowd was as much a part of her 109 years as the corn was. There is a contradiction sitting in this story, and I want you to look for it. We are told longevity is complicated. We are sold the idea that it takes precision, measurement, the right ratios, the right windows, the right supplements, time to the hour. Panchita measured nothing. She owned no scale. She read no label. She could not have told you the protein content of a single thing she ate, and she beat almost every carefully optimized person on the planet by a decade or more. The contradiction resolves like this. Her precision was consistency, not calculation. She did not get the formula exactly right once. She got a good enough plate exactly the same 10,000 mornings in a row. The body does not reward the perfect meal you ate in January. It rewards the decent meal you have eaten every single day for 40 years. Here is what made the researchers stop and look twice. It was not any one nutrient. They went into Nicoya expecting to find a hidden superfood, some berry or root that explained everything. What they found instead was the most ordinary plate imaginable, eaten with total consistency for a lifetime. Corn, beans, squash. The trio the old farmers called the Three Sisters because they grow together in the same field and feed each other in the soil the same way they feed you on the plate. The corn gives a frame for the bean vine to climb. The squash shades the ground and holds the water. And on the table, the corn brings the calcium and the niacin. The beans bring the fiber and the protein. The squash brings the color and the vitamins. Three plants that were built over thousands of years to be eaten together. Panchita's people did not read that in a study. They inherited it. She just kept doing it longer than almost anyone alive. Remember the $1 a day? Hold it next to what the longevity industry is selling right now. The powders, the patented extracts, the monthly subscriptions, the tests that promise to read your biological age. Panchita never saw any of it. She ate a plate that cost pennies, drank her well water, walked to see her neighbors, and swung a machete at 99. The thing that protected her bones and her heart and her mind for 109 years was not exotic, and it was not expensive. It was 3 foods. The same 3 foods eaten before sunrise with people she loved in a kitchen with a dirt floor. The lesson she left is almost insulting in its simplicity. You do not need more. You need the same good thing repeated for longer than you think you can keep it up. So tomorrow morning before the toast goes in, picture the pink dress and the machete and the small plate behind it. Warm a corn tortilla, spoon out the beans and rice you cooked on Sunday. Lay a slice of fresh cheese beside it. That is Panchita's table set in your kitchen with nothing missing but the dirt floor. Do it the next morning too, and the morning after that. Let it get boring. Boring is the point. Panchita's plate never changed, and that sameness was not a limit on her life. It was the quiet machine running underneath it. The novelty we chase, the new diet every spring, the new powder every fall, is the very thing that keeps us from ever eating one good plate long enough for it to matter. That is the whole secret, and she would have laughed at how long it took the scientists to write it down. If you want the full 90 days mapped out zone by zone with the shopping lists and the 30 recipes already done for you, the link is waiting in the description. Subscribe so we can do the Nicoyan one next and walk into another of these kitchens together. Tomorrow the tortilla, tonight the pot of beans. Start there. If this story of Panchita and her 109 years of vitality has changed the way you look at the simple ingredients in your kitchen, please subscribe and like this channel. We are dedicated to uncovering the history and the habits that have been hidden or forgotten by the modern world. Let's plant the seeds for a stronger future together. The next treasure of longevity is waiting to be opened, and it will be revealed very soon.